Hey everybody, how's it going? So I'm coming out here today to tell you the two by far most important things you need to know about interest rates and buying a house. I'll show you what I mean. Number one, let's say instead of buying a house today or 3 months from now or 6 months from now, let's say instead of that, you rent a 3 bedroom apartment. And just to keep the numbers around, let's say that apartment is going to be $1,600 a month. Okay? It's kind of normal. You know, you need a decent size, you've got a decent sized family. Let's just call it 1,600. Okay. Now, no one ever stays in their apartment for 30 years, right? Most people who live in an apartment move around a lot. But let's just say you stayed there for 30 years, just to do the math. If you stayed in that apartment for 30 years, your rent at the end of 30 years, if it only went up 3% a year, which is pretty realistic or maybe higher, your rent would be $3,770 a month. You can check the calculations on the internet. It's really easy to do. Your rent today at $1,600 would literally more than double over 30 years because, inflation rates, rents are going up over 3%. But at 3%, the calculation would bring you to 3,770 if you stayed in the same apartment. If you move in one apartment to another, it's likely going to be even worse, right? Because you get to a new place, you're the new guy, they're going to jack you up, you know, the same or more. Okay, that total rent moving from 1,600 to 3,770 over 30 years. How much do you think you will have paid in rent? It's insane, guys. You will have paid on that example $913,000 paid to a total stranger for letting you rent their apartment over 30 years. So $900,000. You literally just lit a match to almost $1 million over 30 years, probably over 1 million if you move a couple of times, right? So, do you want to do that? Absolutely not. Any way you can avoid doing this is a good idea. Now, what I'm saying is, look, it boils down to in 30 years from now, you will have either lived in a new house or a relatively new house and saved a ton of money, which I'll show you in a second, or you will have just pissed away $900,000. I don't know about you, but I think that's a big deal. So we're talking if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, right? You move to a house and you're going to live there for 30 years, okay? $900,000 in rent, gone. Now, let's look at the other side of the equation. Say you buy a house, and again, I'm keeping the numbers around so it's easier to follow along. You buy a house and you get a mortgage for the full amount, $300,000. Some of you will buy a slightly lower price house, some higher, but round number $300,000. At the end of 30 years, you will have paid at current interest rates approximately $450,000. So what does that mean? Your total payments over the life of that loan would have been $450,000. Your total, yeah. So basically what we're talking about, or I should say really your total interest, right? Of which a substantial amount of that is tax deductible, but we'll save that for another video, right? What I'm saying is this. The home you bought, again, I'll just call it 300,000. Let's say you put no money down, right? That home that you bought for 300,000, if it goes up in value at the same rate that those rents would have gone up, which is pretty much how it works, that home would have been how much do you think? Okay? When you hear this, you're going to really appreciate what I'm telling you. That home would have been worth $706,000. And again, it's approximate, but it's pretty close, averaging at 3%. Now, you paid $300,000, you paid interest, right? But you still have several $100,000 of appreciation in the house. That's yours. It's what's called equity. Now, you also paid off the mortgage. So that $300,000 mortgage has been paid off, mind you, tax deductible, okay? And therefore, you now, if you bought that house at $300,000, now own a house worth $700,000 with your mortgage paid off. Right? You with me? So at the end of 30 years, which I know you're thinking, well, that's a really long time, but let me tell you something, guys. If you plan for this, it will completely change the life of you, your spouse, and your children, right? Because watch, on the one hand, you rented this apartment and you threw away $900,000. On the other hand, you bought a house. The house is now worth $700,000 and it's completely paid off. Okay? Do you see the huge swing? I mean, everybody who looks at these examples who's not in the business or doesn't understand the math or just never looked into the math this deeply will tell you, oh, rent, own, whatever, as long as you got a nice place and you're happy. Please. First of all, the house is going to be much nicer than any apartment for an equal amount of money. And of course, the rent can be lower than the home, but the home is tax deductible. So round numbers, a $1,700 rent is equal to about a $2,000 mortgage, because after you deduct your interest on the mortgage on your tax return, they equal out to about $1,700. So you can get a nicer house than you can an apartment for the same after-tax dollars. Yeah? Okay. So summarizing it, even though I've said it twice, I want to make sure you really understand this. Yeah, you have a backyard. Yeah, you have a beautiful flower garden. Yeah, your kids come home to the same place every day until they grow up. Yeah, to all of that stuff. Those are the aesthetics. Those are the personal aspects of owning your own home. But if you just wanted to look at the bare bones numbers, $900,000 in rent versus at the end of 30 years, renting, you have nothing. Owning that home, you have equity over $700,000. Okay, have I made this as ridiculously obvious as possible? If you can buy a house, buy a house. If you need to do some work on your credit, do the work, right? If you need to go to a relative to borrow or get a gift of some funds to help you with the down payment, do it, okay? That will be the best gift your aunt, your uncle, your mom, your dad, your cousin ever gave you. It's $1 million gift, okay? Guys, I'm not joking. You know, the difference between owning and renting is an entire lifestyle. Because when you're 50, maybe you're already 50, but whatever. Once you've been doing this and owning that home for a while, you can always take a home equity loan $10,000, $20,000, go on any vacations you want, all thanks to the equity in your house, right? You can always sell the house in the interim, right? Let's say you're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to live in Albuquerque or Rio Rancho forever. Well, you don't know that you're leaving either. You buy the house, and if in 5, 10 years you get a job offer in Colorado, you sell the house, you don't pay taxes because primary residences do have a tax shelter, which we're not going to discuss here. But then you go do the same thing in Colorado. But don't give someone $900,000 for the next 30 years just because of one of those reasons. Whatever that reason is, make it go away. I'll help you. I've done it a lot of times for a lot of people, and I did it for myself a long, long time ago, right? That's what we're talking about, guys. This is why it's so huge. So, good luck. Message me if this resonates with you, and I will help you get it done. Talk to you soon.